Well, welcome back to another episode of the Financially Free Journey podcast. This is your host, Courtney Dyer, and you know that this show aims to dispel the seemingly complex topic of finances, of money management, debt, savings, investing, and all things small business. And when it comes to being an entrepreneur, there's a really big segment of the business that a lot of people struggle with, and that's with having a really strong content strategy, being able to not be shackled to a content calendar and to be able to produce enough content that has an organic reach to help your business grow successfully. So because of that, I sought out an expert guest, and I have the opportunity to bring on Neil Sheath today. And he runs an SEO agency. He does copyright. I mean, he is the ultimate guru. So Neil, welcome to the show today. I'm so excited to have this discussion with you.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for the intro. Can't wait to get into this, Courtney.
We're going to get into the meat and potatoes. This is something that weighs on a lot of people, right? Because there's so much out there, and it's like, I need to be on 10 different platforms, posting 10 times a day on each of those platforms. And I need to keep up on track. I mean, it's a lot. Plus running your actual business, it can feel extremely overwhelming, but we know that marketing is so crucial for your business to scale and grow. And so can you give a little context to the listeners around how you came to this point to have your SEO agency and what that looked like for you?
Yeah, no, thanks for asking. So I guess for context, in 2009, I launched my very first website. It was basically a clone of Groupon. I was in investment banking at the time. And by night, I was essentially launching websites. And Groupon clone was the first one. I spent £20,000 on that, which in dollar terms is a lot of money.
Yeah.
And 6 months later, I decided that we couldn't even convince our family and friends to buy, let alone random people, right? So I guess that was the moment that I realized I had no clue about what marketing was. I was a project manager in investment banking, so I was managing teams, a very, very different career, I guess, to what I'm doing now. But what that did mean was it kind of spurred me on to look into online marketing, digital marketing. So I kind of just spent years, literally years, glued to forums and learning. And I guess over about 6 years, I built up an intuition around launching websites, growing businesses, growing brands online, getting to the top of Google, and most importantly, making sales. Towards the end of that, it came to a point where I was just super busy at work and the business was growing. And I thought, let me try and hire an expert or an agency. So I spoke to multiple people and kind of realizing humbly that I knew more than them.
I love it. Humbly so. I was doing fantastic, which is a good thing to recognize, Neil.
Yeah, and I just didn't want to go down some generic kind of strategy with someone that never really cared about my business. So I went, you know what, I'm not going to give it to you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go get some freelancers and build a team to kind of help me grow this. And that's kind of what I did for about a year or two. And then I thought, hold on, why don't I just help other businesses? And I really wasn't enjoying my day job, hence I was doing this. This is kind of what kept me enthusiastic over that time. But and then 2017, we found out we were having a baby. Kind of, it was a now or never moment, and I thought, I've got 6 months before she's born. She's now 4 years old, and and then I launched the agency, and that's kind of where we started. It's been running for about 5 years. We basically help clients with two things. One is, how do I get to the top of Google? And the second is, how do I create content that has impact on my audience and that connects and drives conversions and sales? And that's really what we've been focused on. And especially on the latter, what we noticed over COVID was there was a particular client who didn't necessarily need the full end-to-end package, which is around how do I get to the top of Google, as well as content. But what they really wanted was amazing content without having to spend the time and just content that sounds like them, delivered fast. So we're actually in the middle of launching that as a separate service called Rightfully. So that would be a copywriting service. And sorry, I went on a bit, but I guess that's the story in a nutshell.
Well, when you're speaking about your passion, like we can all go on a bit, right? And that's why you're on here today, is because there's two main points I want to touch on that I know is going to resonate really well with the listeners, especially when they are in the midst of launching their own business. Maybe they've thought about launching, but they're scared, or they've already launched and they're not sure how to scale, or maybe they are scaling and they're like, wow, I need help. I need to be able to outsource. And so people are at various stages. And so I want to touch on two main topics so we have actionable items for the listeners to take away from this episode. First, you mentioned how to get to the top of Google. And I want to dive into that a little bit more, because when we all use Google, we've got the sponsored, and I don't know about you, Neil, but I know me personally, I scroll down past sponsored results that come up and I go to the first organic result that I'm able to find. For some reason in my mind, I feel like it's more trustworthy. I don't know why, but can you talk to that a little bit? Like how do you help people do that, and why is that important?
Yeah, so that is a very, very big question, but I will kind of take it down and simplify it for people that are kind of new to this. So here's the thing: it's all about intent. So when you're thinking about your audience and how do I grow my sales and how do I take my business to the next level, ideally, right, in the perfect world, you want to get in front of someone who is actually looking for you, or not necessarily, they may not necessarily know they need you, but they're looking for things that are earlier in the customer journey stage, right?
Right.
So that's the power of search. So you could spend your time, and I'm not dissing Instagram in any way, but I'm just using as an example. And I use Instagram. I love Instagram. I posted today, but I'm going to kind of frame this and kind of compare the two. One is if you're if you're spending time on Instagram, the type of person that goes onto Instagram is kind of wandering around and having a look. And if they end up making a purchase, it's generally because they've been inspired to make that purchase. So to an extent, if you get 1,000 people looking at your profile or seeing your post, it's very likely a large percentage of those people don't necessarily need your service right now. They may need it sometime in the future, but they don't actually need it right now. Now let's compare that with search. If someone's searching for, hey, I need, I'm looking for a podcasting service. I've just made that up as an example. Or how do I create a podcast? Or, how do I create content, right? Or I want to travel to New York, best flights. That person actually has the intent to buy, right, at some point, at some kind of very soon point, compared to the person who's wandering around and being inspired. So in my view, and actually not just in my view, like if you look at the stats online and what drives sales online, I don't have it to hand, but it's something crazy, like 60 to 70% of online sales either starts with a search or has a search involved in that journey.
Interesting.
So if you look at the big brands like Nike, Adidas, the fashion brands, or any other type of big brand, and you ask them what's at the top of your marketing strategy, search, I can guarantee you will be probably somewhere at the top, if not at the top. And that may be organic or paid. So when it comes to search, you could either, as you mentioned, you could have sponsored listings, or you could, another way of saying that is having paid ads show up at the top. And then the bit below is where you organically, basically over time, build trust with Google. And then Google goes, you know what you're talking about. I send people to your website, and clearly people stay on your website. So that must be a good search result. So I'm going to reward you because I'm going to keep showing you up, right? So that, there's two ways to do it. Organic takes time, just like going to the gym. You're not going to get abs on day one. But over time, as you start to grow, it becomes a bit of a hockey stick and your traffic just grows. And then it's like, it's the best thing in the world, right? Getting inquiries and getting sales without actually paying for it. or actually having to post on social media. It's absolutely amazing. It's almost addictive once you start getting that traffic. And then paid ads, that's another way to do it. Now, you had a question. I wanted to frame this, but you had a question of how do I actually get at the top of Google? Now, that is a big question, but I'm going to kind of just simplify it in almost abstract terms. Just, as an example, if me and you, Courtney, let's say, we've known each other for years, as an example, and you fully trust me. If you were to mention, I guess, our service to one of your friends who actually needs help with copy or content, and they're like, Courtney, I need a really good recommendation, someone that's trustworthy, and you said, go speak to Neil, and rightfully, and they will help you out. There's a very good chance that conversation will turn into some sort of exchange, right?
Yeah.
Similarly, Google has to be able to, Google's business is built on trust. Google never got to where it's got to if the search results on page one were bad. So that's the key, is how do you, if there's anything you take away from this call, because there's going to be a lot of detail in this call, in this podcast. If there's anything you want to take away from this, it's to get to the top of Google, you need to demonstrate that you're a expert, a credible source, and a trustworthy source, a business, in the eyes of Google and users. So whenever I say Google, you could almost substitute that for users. And I can go into detail of how you do that, but that is ultimately what it boils down to, which is why you tend to see big brands on page one, because they're trusted, they're cited by a number of magazines, news authority sites. The content has been well thought out, built out. There's a strategy behind it. It's carefully written. All of these things go towards building you as an expert, credible source and a trustworthy source.
You know what? I love what you brought up, first of all, with Instagram, because you think about your own activities as a user of these platforms, of Google and Instagram, for example. When I need an answer to a question or a problem that I have, I don't go to Instagram, I don't go to Facebook to solve my problem. I go there to go be entertained. And as you said, if I'm inspired enough by a company or a product or a message, I may convert, but it's not because I had an immediate need. It's because I was inspired into that action. So naturally, your conversion as a business is going to be lower because of the intent at the beginning. And with Google, I just think about my own activities. It's like when I want an answer to something or I need a product or a service, I go to Google. And that is, as I mentioned before, you talked about this and you went into your answer, it's like, that's what I trust. And so over time, you can then organically come to the top of the Google searches. So how do you do that though? You have to be credible, you have to be consistent, just like going to the gym and trying to build your abs. But what are some actions that the listeners can take if they're trying to get their business to the top of the Google search?
Yeah, sure. So I guess before I talk about that, there's something that you said that I thought actually that's a really good point. With the whole inspire, I guess just to build on what you said around being inspired. For those that are in this procrastination around their funnel, they're strategizing their funnel and they're spending weekends and evenings and hours and days and months going, okay, do I send them here? Then I send them there. Then I send them there. And then by the time they go to a sale, they might make a sale. But if they don't, then I need to send them another email. And it gets so complicated, right? It gets pretty stressful. Even just talking about that's stressing me out.
Oh yeah. I'm feeling anxiety listening to you talk about it.
Hopefully I'm not turned off.
Yeah.
Because they've now got anxiety. But let me solve that. The reason why you need to overcomplicate that funnel is because you're taking those people from being inspired or not knowing they've got a problem to kind of explaining that they've got a problem, telling them all the solution, and then bridging the gap, right? And then going down that route. So when we look at funnels and all of that stuff, it's because that person is so removed away from where you want to get them to that you kind of need to really think through that funnel, which is a common step activity. And it's not to say you shouldn't be doing that, but I just want to kind of compare that. When you're getting in front of someone who's looking for your service, product, or has a need or question closely related to your product or service, and they're very close to it with that question, your funnel doesn't need to be complicated. It could be very simple: inquire now, get in touch. It could be download this guide as a trial, take a demo, or buy this. That is your funnel. And that's the power of search and getting in front of people who actually need you. So if I was to pick any strategy, this would definitely be at the top, and we can get into this later, but what you can do is you can be smart around your SEO strategy and how to get to the top of Google, because you can repurpose that content onto Instagram, and suddenly now you've kind of just made your online marketing, you've gone from like a Batman strategy to a Superman strategy.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, I just made that up. But
that was great in the moment.
Yeah, I was thinking, should I go Robin to Batman or Batman to Superman?
I think and it depends on people's opinions, but I think Batman to Superman, I think that's top notch, Neil.
Yeah, I think it's cool. I mean, there's I'm sure I could maybe kind of think about other superheroes. But anyway, so your question around how do we get to the top of Google? So first and foremost, there's small things like if you've got a local shop or a local presence or an office or some sort, you can just sign up to Google My Business, which is free. Just search for Google My Business, and you just sign up and you put in your address. You don't necessarily need to show it, but you can put in your address, add as much detail as you want, your opening hours, all of those things, add a link to your website. And that is just an immediate way of telling Google that, hey, I've got a presence. That's super easy. It'll take you 5 minutes to sign up, maybe 10, 15 minutes to add a bit more detail. You will get a postcode in the post, and then you just verify your location. So it does need to be a physical location. So that's just a quick kind of tip. The other thing is, and I guess this is where it gets slightly more complicated, but what you can then do is actually just think about your users and what they're searching for and what your services are. So let's take an example. So if you can give me, Courtney, if you can give me an example of your audience, what's someone in your audience, what type of business would they run?
They would be running, I would say, a small online boutique, like a clothing boutique, for example. That would be a pretty popular one. Okay,
so for that person who's selling e-commerce, if you want more details, I would go check out my blog. It's on yourbrandfound.com. There's a blog post I did a few weeks ago on e-commerce, how we grew sales by 300% within 5 months. That's a 2,000-word blog post. It goes through every single detail, like uncomfortably every single detail. So I would recommend reading that if you're e-com and you want to learn how to do it. Now, I guess to distill that is, if someone's selling something online, what you want to do is have some sort of idea of what are people searching for related to my product. And that activity is called keyword research. And there are tools where you could do keyword research and actually find what people are looking for, like Google's free keyword planner. You've got Ahrefs, SEMrush, you've got loads of keyword research tools. The simplest way, if you want to avoid like all this technical hurdles, is just go to Google, literally, and go into the box and search for your product. So if you sell red dresses, just type in red dress and see what people search for, or see what it comes up suggested by Google. And as we speak, I'm going to go over to Google and I'm actually going to search for this. And it seems like I've got a connection problem. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, that's really strange. So I can't Google it right now, but if you just basically search for...
Well, I typed in red dress and it says red dress shoes, red dress shirt, red dress lyrics, red dress with sleeves, red dress boutique. Those are the things that populated when I just popped in red dress in Google.
Awesome. That's amazing. So there you already have a bunch of ideas. Like people are searching for red dress. They're searching for what shoes should I wear with my red dress. So let's say you sell red dresses, but clearly people aren't, people are also searching for FAQs related to that. What you could do is you could create some content around what shoes they should create, and who knows, you might get found by that person. Now, if I was to kind of critique that point, here's where it gets slightly complicated. That person is clearly looking for shoes with their red dress. So they've got an existing dress. So I'm almost saying, actually, that's not a good idea. And this is where SEO becomes a bit of an art rather than a science, because that person clearly has a red dress. However, if you're looking to become a thought leader in the space, the pro is actually that type of content would resonate. You could share that, and you could quite easily create some good images for Instagram and actually repurpose that. So it's not just content built to get to the top of Google and become visible. It's actually something you could use across the site. So keyword research is super, super important. It becomes almost like an intuition the more you've done it. But actually just seeing what Google suggests and seeing what questions appear on page one, it's second to none. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, which I've kind of already highlighted, is content, is creating the right content. Now, there is a methodology around how do I create SEO optimized content, I guess, which we're probably not going to have time for, but just making sure that your content is worthy of standing on page one is a good question to ask yourself. Like, if you're producing something, the easiest thing you could do is go see what's already on page one and then say, how do I beat this? How do I create something as good, if not better? If you can't, then go find another keyword where you see an opportunity. And then thirdly so we've talked about keyword research. The second is content creation. Third is around authority. Courtney, you've been running this podcast for a very long time. You're very good at it. I can just tell how natural you are and how easy this is for you. And that's because you've had so much practice and you've made mistakes early on, right?
Oh, of course.
I guess as a podcaster, if someone was to ask me, hey, who's really good at podcast, I would say, hey, Courtney's an authority as a podcaster. You should speak to her, right? And that's the same thing Google's going and asking itself when it's showing up sites on page one. Who's an authority in this space? So yes, to appear to be an authority, you need to create the right content on your site. You need to make sure your site's content rich. It needs to describe what you do, your credibility, your degrees, your masters, anything like that goes towards, I guess, the more you go into the life problems like health, your credibility requirements go drastically up, right? Because you're actually impacting people's lives. But, those are things you can control. Now, here's something you can't necessarily control. Authority is also how would you say you're an authority? It's who is part of your circle and what other authorities refer to you. So I guess to simplify that, who else talks about you? Who's an existing authority today that also talks about you? And in the SEO and the Google, kind of getting to the top Google industry, we talk about this term as link building. Who links to you? Who mentions you? So as an example, a couple of weeks ago, I was actually in the newspaper. It was part of a recruitment opinion piece. I was in Forbes about a month ago. This from an SEO perspective is amazing, right? Because they're mentioning me, they're citing me, they're talking about me, and then ideally, they don't always do this because they know the power of it. Ideally, they link to my website. That's what I really want, is I want links coming back to my website, because then Google goes, these authority websites who I already trust also trust Neil. So that means I should trust them. So that means I should trust Neil. And that's what, people listening to this should go away with is building your authority is a journey of creating content for other sites, being interviewed, appearing on podcasts. And over time, you grow as an authority in your niche. Google starts to notice. Google goes from not knowing you to liking you to then loving you. And when you get Google loving you, it becomes like traffic overdrive. Like you could start to rank seriously.
So you're courting Google, right? Like you're building a relationship with Google. You're holding open the door. You're paying the bill on dinner. Like that's what I'm getting from you here, Neil. It takes time, but when you talked about link building specifically within SEO, that makes so much sense. Why you hear all the time when you're building a business or you're building a brand, it's critical to have credible media coverage because Google's, it's gathering and that's all it's doing, right? It's gathering information all the time. And anytime your name or your business is mentioned, that's connecting back to the content you're putting out organically and not having to do the paid sponsored, search at the top of the Google engine, which is the ultimate goal for businesses and brands. Is that correct?
Absolutely. So, I mean, if you think about it, people, when they hear the term SEO, they go, that's too long term. I'm not going to do that. It's too complicated.
Yeah, they get scared. They turn off because it's like, I don't understand that,
Yeah, but here's the thing. Number one, we talked about keyword research, which is just another way of knowing what your audience is searching for. I say this a lot, but I think persona and target audience persona and defining all of that is overrated. But when I can just find out what they're searching for, if I can get in front of the right search, I could backward engineer who they are. So keyword research is basically taking your target audience persona just to a whole new level. You're understanding what they're searching for. So that's
yes. So it's not just starting with the customer avatar. And I like how you said you can reverse engineer into that perfect customer if you understand what they are searching for.
Yeah, really well said. I mean, I've launched 2 businesses on the back of not knowing who they are and only understanding what they're searching for. And then I know who they are because I get the inquiry and I go, I keep getting inquiries from these people. That's clearly my target audience. So that's the first thing. Keyword research is basically target audience on a whole new level. Secondly, we talked about content creation, creating content which people want. That's the second thing, right? The third thing we talked about is actually trying to get featured and mentioned in authoritative publications, magazines, blogs, podcasts, whatnot. And that's the third thing. So let's take away this conversation around SEO and how to get to the top of Google. Would you agree all of those 3 things is probably something you should be doing if you're trying to build a brand?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And hence I created this video on YouTube called SEO, the compass to building a brand online, because I generally organically believe that if you're looking to build a brand online, you follow that path and it just steers you in the right direction. It avoids you kind of wasting time posting for posting's sake. So, hopefully.
Okay, so what's the name of the video? Because I want to make sure to link it in the show notes so everybody can go watch it.
Yeah, it's called, I was actually playing around with the YouTube this morning, so I've actually got it up here. The video is called The SEO Compass, Path to Reaching More Customers and Building a Brand.
Perfect.
It's literally a 5-minute video that just describes, I guess, what I've just said in a bit more detail.
I love it. And again, Neil, a great example of putting out quality content that's rich. So that way people feel inspired or you're solving the problem that they're searching for. YouTube is another great one. People go in and search specifically for what they want. I am a graduate of YouTube University, let me tell you. So, okay, if the listeners are going to take away one thing, they're going to take away, you've got to know the keywords. You've got to do keyword research. You've got to have content that's rich, that solves problems that your customer is searching for. And you also need to be recognized as an authority in the space so Google can translate that over to becoming more searchable. And And I want everybody to make sure that they know, like we talked about a lot, but those are 3 simple bullet points that you need to expand on, because this is critical in building a brand and a business, because we know we're in a digital age. If we're not visible online, it's like we don't even exist, you know? So okay, where can the listeners find you if they want to, you put out a ton of great content. So where can they find that and find out more about you and your company?
Yeah, no, thanks for asking. And thanks for summarizing that really well. So, look, my personal blog is yourbrandfound.com. That's just where I share tips and strategies and content. I just enjoy doing that. I do have a 5-day SEO challenge, which is currently on hold just because we're super busy. But if anyone's interested, you could sign up. And then one day when I open that up, that could be something you get some help with.
You'd be on the waiting list.
Yeah, that's awareness. And then, the company-wise, Bubbly Digital is an SEO agency. That's where we do SEO for you. And what I'm really excited about is what we're about to launch, which is Rightfully, and that's rightful.ly. So www.rightful.ly. And that is a copywriting on-demand service where you could literally have us write your brand story or your blog posts for you in your voice, in your tone of voice, and have it turnkey. Or you could be involved with our writers. So it's basically an editorial team on demand. We work across.
That's amazing, because copyright is such an art in itself, because again, that's what you guys are doing. You're optimizing the keywords. So then that way this is searchable content, and being able to, just because you run a business and you have a passion around your clothing boutique, right? We'll connect it back. Doesn't mean you're now a professional copywriter. You understand SEO in depth. So it's really great to look into options like Rightfully, and that's rightful.ly. And I'll make sure to link it in the show notes as well, because it's a great way to say, you know what, my time is going to be focused on my passion, which is why I started this business, so I don't get burned out. So it's a great opportunity for you to look at that. And we know copyright is insanely important when it comes to your business. Neil, thank you so much for coming on today. And I know that the listeners are going to take away a ton, because this is a really hot topic for anyone that's starting or has a business. So thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Courtney. Really enjoyed it.
And guys, you know where to find me online. It's at Financially Free Journey on Instagram and on TikTok. It's financiallyfreejourney.com. I post daily tips and motivation to help you on your journey to financial freedom. Until next time.